Good morning, Miss Heather. Here I am going to be working with my students on my second period American history class. Before I get started here, I'm going to show you my lesson plan. Very detailed, full of lots of ideas. We're going to do a little pre-presentation today going over our tests and stuff for tomorrow, basically covering the amendments and things of such sort. So I've got everything I need together here. The kids will be coming in here just shortly.
All 7th graders participating in Talent Search need to report to the library. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, listen up, everybody. Calm down. Let's get situated. Let's get seated. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Yep. Oh, lovely. Thank you. It's nice of you, Derek. And more gym bags. Okay. All right. We are going to be going over a review for the amendments. Okay, everybody's seated and accounted for. All right. Quickly, I showed you here is my. I wish it wasn't backwards. My lesson plan. All right. The amendments. I want to share something with everybody quickly. I thought this was kind of an interesting statistical data I had found. It says, what is the Bill of Rights? Only 1 in 3 Americans knows what the Bill of Rights is, and according to a poll commissioned by the American Bar Association, the survey offered a series of multiple choice questions to 507 participants. 33% correctly identified the Bill of Rights as the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, but 28% said it was the Constitution's preamble. Another 7% confused it with the Declaration of Independence, and 10% simply just didn't know. Fewer than 1 in 10 know why the Bill of Rights was adopted. So I just wanted to share that little bit of information because I found that to be exceptionally sad that people have gotten away from core meanings and why things are the way they are. So, okay.
Anybody else what area yesterday needs this?
All right. You got it? Okay. Let's get passed out, gets down. Okay. I will be assigning page 92 here when we're finished. We will be doing something abbreviated. Recalling facts. We're finished here. 1 through 10. Understanding, critical thinking. Three through 4, and critical thought. problem 1. Okay. Everybody get that copied down real quick. Yes, Parker. Parker, I know why you're smiling. Put the cell phone away. No one's that happy to see their crotch. Give me the phone. All right. Thank you. No cell phones. Let's stay focused, everybody. All right. Everybody got this right now? Good deal. Want to get it wrote down here after this discussion. We're going to work on it. Have any questions? Let me know. Tomorrow is the test. I know today is just a lot of review, but we will get it all finished. If you have any questions about the test, feel free to ask me. All right, if we start out from page 83 to 84, we're going to cover 14th through the 26th amendment that we need to really focus on for review for our test. You know, obviously the first 10 are the Bill of Rights. Okay, we've got that all under control. We've discussed that earlier, but the test is primarily going to focus on amendments 14 through 27, but I want to cover 11 through 27. Okay. The reason we're really specifically focusing on only Amendment 14 through 26 is because it is prime OGT material that we need to really focus on. On page 88, Amendment number 11, dated 1795, remove cause in which the states was sued without its consent from the judiciation, I'll get it out here, of the federal courts. Important, yes. We will come back to that one specifically in the next chapter. Number 12 was adopted in 1804, required president electors to vote separately for president and vice presidents. Like I said, that is something we will be covering next chapter. 13, the abolishment of slavery, and authorized Congress to pass legislation implementing its abolishment. And it was in 1865. Those specific ones we're going to be targeting along with African Americans and getting their voting rights and stuff more in the next chapter, you know, because then it leads more into civil rights and things of such sorts. These amendments was written at the time for interpretation. It was set for the law, but as time, society, and culture has changed. People have changed, and adaptation and meaning has changed. So we have to take that into consideration, even though some of these was written as early as 1865 and 1992. All right, 14th and 15th Amendment, getting on task. Starting out in 1868, granted citizenship to all persons born, naturalized United States, banned states from denying any person life, liberty, or property without due process of law, banned states from denying any person equal protection under the laws. This was one of those moments in history where it started to really touch on freed slaves, children who were born to slaves, and their identity as citizens, American citizens, their voting rights, political rights, economic rights. As we move on down towards 15 here, we go into and we explore, it was dated 1870 and extended the voting rights to African Americans by outlawing and denying the right to vote on basis of race, color, and previous condition of servitude. Sadly, there was a period in the United States when slavery did exist and people were foreseen as property, but as time has changed, so did the Constitution, and it had to make the amendments and the adjustments for everyone to have and experience equal rights. However, African American men were granted their voting rights before African American women. That come on later in the later 1900s with the Women's Coalition, the women's suffrage, excuse me. There you learn more about those fundamentals. Like I said, the next chapter we're going to cover more in depth with that. Right now, like I said, we're just going to cover for today for the review for the test, the primary stuff that is OGT material and core information that you have to have. All right. So we've covered the rules for naturalizing citizens, due process, life, liberty, or property, and it cannot be taken. So we know that number 14, these elements cannot be taken. Okay? 14. We also know that 15 puts no restriction on voting based on race. So 15 promises no restriction. You know, this meant a lot to people, especially African American men, because they were seen now as an equal to the Caucasian male. Same thing eventually this led with Latinos, Asian Americans, American Indians. You know, this was the start to really get more of an equal opportunity on the political playing field. Number 16. Here's the one that none of us have ever liked from the moment we started our first job. 1913 empowered Congress to levy an income tax. The beauty of a pre-adult and adulthood is Uncle Sam takes his chunk out of your paycheck. You're taxed for everything under the sun. You get taxed owning a home, you get taxed to get driver's license, to have plates on your car, you tax gasoline. There is a food tax in different states, taxes on alcohol, cigarettes, there's a marriage tax, there's a death tax, there's a real estate tax. This is where the politicians at this point in history was trying to even out the playing field between the Republicans and the Democrats. There was such kind of an influctuation between the two parties, and there was issues of money, you know, and how to control it, how to gain it, how to make more revenues. So they come up with the idea and the policy, hey, we're just going to tax. Yes, to some extent, taxing has kind of been an issue and has gotten out of control. I mean, you get taxed to be born. You know, you pay taxes on your child, or as a credit on your income tax. You are taxed when you die. You know, you have an estate tax, whatever you have maybe left to your family, spouse. You know, some of it gets a little extreme, but like with taxing alcohol, that is where we touch into like the prohibition. And finally, when the government decided, hey, you know, we can't outlaw all the drunkenness and uncontrollableness and the religious conflict, we're just going to okay it and tax it. Much kind of like some of the earlier conflicts now we're seeing with the legalization of marijuana in the state of California. It's how they're going to tax it. Anyway, moving on. Let's see. 16. Like I said, all right, covered 16. Income tax. 17. 1913 provided the election of the U.S. Senators by direct popular vote instead of state legislation. This is just more or less a reformed idea for the voting process. There again, eliminating more conflict of interest within the internal parties, the people involved. 18 then was dated 1919. Authorized Congress to prohibit the manufacture, sale, and transportation of liquor. There again, the prohibition. You know, they just like sales of alcohol. And, you know, a lot of people was complaining, you know, the drunkenness, the disorderliness, the crime. It was something that was really focused more towards lower class people because they seen the domestic violence rate, they seen the abuse going on, you know, and they associated this more with uneducated lower class people. However, between giving one direct control to vote for senators, the government's now got the right to tax for income tax. There's been no restrictions on voting, and it's all been lifted off of race. Things are changing. People are starting to really think. Really becoming more open-ended. So they eventually outlawed it, changed the amendment, and started taxing alcohol and putting the heavier laws over time on, consumption, restriction, and violation if you break the laws with it, including, public intoxication. We're talking about open container, things like that. It had to be kept more in a controlled context. Okay, number 19. 1920 extended the right to vote for women. Here's the women's suffrage. This is where it affects not only Caucasian white American women, it also affected African American women, Asian American women, Native American women, all these immigrated women from Germany, Poland, all these major people that come in through Ellis Island at the turn of the century. Women had the right now to vote. They were seen as an equal to a man. So that increased a lot of different opinions and stereotypes, but it also gave women a leading role politically and more into the workforce, because they were starting to be seen more as an equal, less than just the role of being the woman at home who rears the children, who rears the house, cooks and maintains things. Women were starting to become more thoughtful, thought-provoked, educated, and sought out better positions outside of their home in terms of economics, job opportunities, educational opportunities, and in some circumstances, it really did benefit the family. Now, there were some divorces and some conflicts of interest, so we're not going to get into that. But idealistically, we want to see society as, it benefited, for the most part, the women's suffrage and voting rights. It benefited this nation tremendously. All right. Number 20, 1933, shortened the time between president election, inauguration, and designing January 20th as inauguration day, set as January 3rd as the date for opening new Congress. Here we just recently went through elections. It's a mid-term elections. This is not the big presidential elections. This basically just put a limit on time for the simple fact we had presidents that, like Theodore Roosevelt, who wanted to run for a third term, in his Bull Party, that he emulated his own party. And they put limitations on this politically for the nation's sake, so that it's not a prestigious position that gets overly abused. All right. So we've shortened the time between presidents. We've discussed women's right to vote, prohibition of alcohol, which leads to taxing it and accepting it, no longer outlawing. We give one direct control to vote for Senate. We give the right to tax, income tax. Welcome to adulthood when you get your first job and you have to pay income tax. No restriction on voting based on race. And we've also covered rules for naturalizing citizens, due process, life, liberty, property, and it cannot be taken. All right. Number 21. In 1951, limited presidents to 2 full terms of office. Between 1951 and 1933, presidentially, I'm skipped. Yes, I know. I see that I skipped. I skipped 21. It's 22 I'm talking about. I'm sorry. You're right. Presidential terms needed limited to 2 full terms, and you were done. Because, like I said, we had Theodore Roosevelt, and a couple other presidents. Just, I don't want to say pretty much that they seemed like power hogs, but in a way they had very aggressive, dominant political personalities. And it was quoted in the trade book that Theodore Roosevelt was remembered as more or less being acting as if he wanted to be the corpse at every funeral and the bride at every wedding, just for the simple fact that he was an attention getter. He was an aggressive political figure. He was an aggressive, dominant male figure, and politically we had to set guidelines and rules, as we were talking about there, to shorten terms. You know, your time's up, you're done. You know, you got to go on. You got to move on, retire, go hunt buffalo or whatever I think he done in Africa, and then he went down to South America and done some grand hunting down there, as I'd read his life biography. Back to 21. Sorry, I got in reverse there. Made a mistake. 21 repealed the 18th Amendment, empowered Congress there again to what? Regulate liquor sales. You know, over time, states changed it that you had to be a specific age, and that is... Don't everybody answer at once. 21. You have to be 21. You know, later rules from that had come, no drinking and driving, different things like that, you know, drunkenness, open container, disorderly conduct, things like that. That fell under the Prohibition Act, the simple fact that society needed to take an upper hand with people who were just simply out of control. Okay, moving on. Amendment number 23 in 1961 granted voters in the District of Columbia the right to vote for president and vice president. You know, this is a historical moment for this country. You know, it's making good political advancements next to limiting terms on presidential, elections. And it's something that even opened up and welcomed in, you know, back to number 14 and 15. And extending voting rights and, you know, keeping the main perspective of pursuing life, liberty, property, wealth without process of law. You know, handed down from states denying any person protection under the laws. All right, poll tax. Amendment number 24, 1964, forbid requiring the payment of poll tax to vote in federal elections. At one time in the United States, you had to pay a tax to vote. It's silly as it may sound, times have changed, and this is why something I'm especially thankful for, because it was a way states used to limit certain races and classes of people from voting because maybe they didn't have the money. And they used that opportunity to exclude those groups of people because they couldn't pay the poll tax. This eliminated that opportunity, falling back on number 15, no restrictions. Poll tax was seen as a restriction. Alrighty. Number 25, 1967 provided a succession for office of the president, and in the event of death or incapacity for fulfilling vacancies, the office of the vice president. As we move on later on here with American history, this will be something that we will touch on in the assassination of JFK. You know, we discussed it briefly with the assassination of President Lincoln, you know, how that whole process kind of worked. I mean, with Lincoln, I know it was kind of a circumstantial thing, but this is something that really incorporated more in the 60s, the simple fact JFK was assassinated. So like I said, that's something we will move towards here later on within the year, but it's something I want to focus on right now because it is an amendment. It is very valuable. We have to know this stuff. Again, it is OGT material, and I want you to be able to separate it out mentally and cognitively from the Bill of Rights. All right, number 26. 1971 extended the right to vote 18 years old. This played a huge part for the simple fact we had the Korean conflict, which was later changed here a few years ago to the Korean War, to Vietnam. The two wars overlapped more or less timing-wise for this country, and there was a huge debate of the fact that if he was young enough to go to war, join the military, why couldn't you vote? You know, the nation itself kind of had this envision that, you know, if you could buy alcohol, you could buy cigarettes at this age, you can join the military, you can get married, why can't you vote? Of course, later on, as I said, legal drinking limit was changed to 21, but still at 18, you can buy a gun, you can register to vote now, you can legally get married, you can join the military, you know, you can get a passport, you're considered an adult. So this was something the states really took effect into, but a lot of it was believed to fall down because of the Vietnam War, guns, the war going on, you know, so many students graduating and leaving for the war during this very critical, kind of hectic time and period. Number 27, 1992. We go from 1971 to 1992, almost 20 years later. Banned Congress from increasing its members' salaries until the next election. Now, why does anybody think that this is a huge thing? 20 years later, why is this an issue? Any ideas? Any thought on this? Okay, well, I'll tell you what. I'll fill it in. Here. Shh. Can we keep that down, please? All right. Thank you. Putting it in the trash. The main reason this is such an issue is many of the politicians over the last 35 years have decided, hey, I'm elected, you know, I'm kind of my own person, I'm my own boss, and I'm going to give myself a pay raise at the voter's expense. However, it took a good bit of time for voters to get it into effect because they seen what was happening. They were watching the elected officials' records, things like that, what was going on. And they realized that, you know, hey, this guy's giving himself a pay raise and he's making twice the money and doing less of the work. So this was something that was brought to Congress's attention. And like I said, if they do give themselves a pay raise, next election you get it. And I think that's a very reasonable limitation and expectation. You know, you need to work with the money you've got, then you need to prove to me in the next election, to the political parties you serve, the people you serve, that this is what you have to do, this is what you're worth, fine. But you have to express that talent and that effort and that work if you're elected next round. So that was kind of a nifty way of really making an impact for Congress and these elected officials and stuff, because, you know, it's not right to tax the people, spend our money, and not work for us. We vote for you to put you in position to help us people. So we've lowered the voter age. Vietnam War had a huge impact on that. Line of presidents and their successor, like I said, again, JFK. This is something we will cover later on in a separate section. This just goes in through these amendments. I really wanted you to have a solid grasp on. Do I have any questions? Everything mainly we need to cover for this test tomorrow will be on page 88. You know, the United States is one of the oldest written constitutions in the world, yet it's been amended only 27 times. Pretty amazing to be born into a nation that's so free. So, all right, well, I don't have any questions here. The period's just about over here in just a few minutes. I will let you work on your assignment. It is due tomorrow. And we will be taking the test first thing in the morning. We'll get that situated. Anybody have any questions? I'm open for discussion. Okay. Would you please stop at the paper? Miss Heather, here quickly, I wanted to share with you. With this group, super group of kids, what challenged me the most is lack of response. Some days it's motivation and attention, I think. I do deal with a lot of quiet periods, silent periods in the middle of my lectures and discussions. I could see that there was no sometimes connection to my content. So I decided, I try to use my 6 faucets of understanding to help break things up and chunk it more, give it more of a way to break down so they can understand what they're discussing, points to it, and also letting them know that certain things we will be studying later on, but right now we have to have the Bill of Rights, know what it is, separate it, and then understand what's core OGT material as well as what we're all
Anybody else, what areas today need this?
No, we don't need that. Mr. Robinson and I have been co-teaching from each other. He was insisting the kids, as I said before, have that solid understanding of, number one, the Bill of Rights, and they have a solid understanding of all 27 amendments because of this section that I had read you earlier about the Bill of Rights and the data bank. Would you please stop? It's not lunchtime. Thank you. Stop eating. And you can have your phone back after class is over. Here it's over in about 5 minutes. So, anyway, things are doing fantastic. I wanted to share with you these last few minutes of class. Like I said, my lesson plans doing very good with everything that is going on. So, my next step at this point is to change the silent periods. I want to really think my plans of action more to improve my student progress personally. I'm going to try unfolding the strategy more of a kinetic phenomenon. And, okay, all right, everybody, have a nice day. And once I do that, we'll see how that turns out for my next student teaching, hopefully video. Have a nice day, Heather.